Hey, you guys, I'm back. So this recording number 2, please make sure you pay careful attention during this recording because I'm going to teach you some things that we haven't talked about in this class yet. So it's super important that you follow along. I'll try and keep it less than 10 minutes. So here we go. Second part. Okay, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet in this class is that sometimes when you're solving an equation, you're going to end up having an equation that has a solution of all real numbers or that doesn't have a solution. So let me show you what that looks like, okay? If we were to solve this equation right here for the x, we can see that on the right side, we need to simplify it. We need to distribute this 3, which would give us 3x minus 6 plus 11. And then we need to combine these like terms. They're on the same side, so we just combine them. We get 3x plus 5. And now from here, we would get these two variables, these two terms that have the same variable to be on the same side by canceling off the 3x from one of the sides, okay? But then can you see when we subtract 3x from the other side as well, our variable drops out and we're left with a statement that is true, okay? If this happens, if when you're solving an equation, your variable drops out and you're left with a statement that is true, you would say your solution is all real numbers, okay? So if we go back to this step right here, we have 3 times x plus 5 equal to 3 times x plus 5. And so if we're trying to make a true statement, it doesn't matter what we pick for x. X could be 2, x could be negative 10, x could be 57, okay? X could be anything because on both sides, we're multiplying whatever we plug in for x by 3, and then we're adding 5, okay? So x can be anything. We can say our solution is all real numbers. Okay, let's look at the next one down below. You can see on the left side, we need to combine our like terms. We've got 2x, we've got a negative 5x, so that would be a negative 3x minus 4 equal to, on the right side, we need to distribute. This would be negative 3x plus 12, okay? And then from there, we would add 3x to both sides. Okay, so now I'm going to add 3x to the other side. And this time, can you see our variable drops out and we're left with negative 4 equals 12, which is not a true statement. Okay, so if your variable drops out, you're left with a statement that is not true. You would say there is no solution. Okay, and let's go back up to this step right here where we had negative 3x minus 4 equal to negative 3 times x plus 12. There's not anything that we could plug in for this x and then multiply it by negative 3 and subtract 4 from it on the left side and have it be equal to the same thing as adding 12 to it on the right side, okay? So we would say there is no solution. So let's look at one more of these. So for this one, it looks like we need to simplify the left side, we need to simplify the right side, and then we'll solve. Okay, so to simplify the left side, we first distribute our 4. So that would be 4x minus 8 plus 3x plus 5. Then we combine like terms. 4x and 3x is 7x. Negative 8 and 5 is a negative 3 equal to, on our right side, we're going to distribute the 2 here. So that would be 2x minus 6. And then we still have our 5x plus 3. Okay, now we're going to combine like terms. So we have a 5x and 2x, which is 7x. And we have a 3 and we have a negative 6, which is negative 3. Okay, so right here, can you guys see that these two sides are exactly the same? And if we were to cancel off the 7x from both sides, we would be left with negative 3 equals negative 3, which is a true statement. So the solution here is all real numbers, okay? We can plug anything in for the x in this equation, and it will make it true. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about really quickly is sometimes you are going to have equations with fractions. And I'm going to teach you a trick to make this a little bit easier, okay? If you have a fraction like 2/3, if you want to make that just a 1, you can multiply by its reciprocal, okay? To multiply fractions, we do top times top. So 2 times 3 would be 6. 3 times 2 would be 6. 6 divided by 6 is a 1, okay? So anytime you want to make a fraction a 1, you can multiply by its reciprocal. So if we have 3/4, we want to make that a 1, we could times it by 4/3. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1. Okay? If we have a negative fraction, like negative 2/3, if we multiply by the negative reciprocal, that's going to end up giving us a positive 1. Negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Okay? So we're going to use this trick when we solve equations with fractions. If we want this to be a 1x, and we want to, so we need to get rid of this 2/3, one thing that we can do is we can multiply by 3/2, okay? That's going to make this a 1x, and then we multiply the other side by 3/2. Okay, we know that 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 times 3 is 6. So x equals 6 would be our solution. So let's look at another one. 4/5 times by x equals 8. A trick we can use is to multiply by the reciprocal on the left side, because we know that 5/4 times 4/5 gives us 1x. And then we'd have to multiply by 5/4 on the right side. 4 goes into 8 twice. 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, for this one, if we want to eliminate the negative 2/3 and make it a 1x, we can multiply by negative 3/2. That will give us a 1x. And then I multiply by negative 3/2 on the right side. 2 goes into 6 3 times. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Okay, so that's just a trick for getting rid of fractions. Another trick is that if you have more than one term in your equation and you want to eliminate all the fractions, you can find a common denominator for all of the terms. Like we have a 2, we have a 4, we have a 1, we have an 8. So a common denominator for all 4 of those would be 8. If we multiply every term in this equation by 8, okay, that is going to get rid of our fractions. Let me show you how that works. 8/1 times 1/2. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 4 times 1x is 4x. For this next one, 4 goes into 8 twice. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. For the next one, we have 24x. For the next one, 8 goes into 8 once. 1 times negative 7 is negative 7. Okay, once all of our fractions have been eliminated, now we can just continue solving this equation. So if we minus 4x from both sides, we get negative 6 equals 20x minus 7. Then we would add 7 to both sides. We get 1 equals 20x. Divide by 20 on both sides. X equals 1/20. Okay, let's do one more where we eliminate all the fractions. Okay, so to eliminate the fractions, we find a common denominator between all 3 terms, which in this case would be a 9. So if we multiply all of these terms by a 9, 3 goes into 9 3 times. 9 goes into 9 once. 1 times 4x is 4x. And 10 times 9 is 90. And then we would subtract 3 from both sides. Negative 4 times x equals 87. Then divide by negative 4. X equals 87 divided by negative 4. So that's just a trick on how to deal with fractions in your equations. And on today's assignment, there are a few where you need to use that trick. Okay. The last thing that I want to talk about for this second recording is don't forget your solution needs to be a positive isolated variable. Okay. So if we have 5 minus x equals 10, if we subtract 5 from both sides, we're going to be left with a negative x equals 5. And we're not done solving yet until this is a positive 1x. A negative x is like having a negative 1 times by x. Okay, that's what this is. So to get rid of the multiplication of -1, we would use division. So this would be x equals -5. Okay, let's look at another one like this. We would subtract 11 from both sides. So we would have 4 equals, see the minus sign in front of the y? That's really like having a -1 times by y. So we have to divide by -1 on both sides. We get -4 equals y. All right, one more like this. Let's say that we subtract 6x from both sides. Okay, so that would leave us with -1 times x plus 4 equals, there's a minus sign in front of this too. Okay, and then to solve, we would have to subtract 4 from both sides. So -1 times x equals -6. And we're not done solving yet until this is a positive 1x. So we have to get rid of the multiplication of -1 by using division. X equals 6. Okay, so those are just some tricks that you guys are going to need to learn to use on today's assignment. I am going to meet you in recording number 3 because there's a few more things I need to talk to you about, and I need to show you what you're going to be working on for the remainder of class today. Okay, so please click on recording number 3, and I will see you there.